After my wife returned from a work trip, she completely changed and suggested we open our relationship. Then I discovered that her therapist was actually her high school friend, who encouraged her to cheat and ultimately destroyed our marriage. Around 6 or 7 months ago, I started noticing a change in my wife, Carla. It was after her company's annual work trip, a retreat organized by her manager aimed at fostering team connections and strengthening bonds. Usually, she returned from these trips feeling energized, eager to share stories about her colleagues, and excited by the new experiences she had. This time, however, something was different. From the moment she came home, her attitude seemed distant. She didn't talk much about the trip, which was unusual for her. When I asked if something had happened, she simply shook her head and dismissed my concerns. At first, I thought it was just the typical exhaustion after a busy trip, the traveling, socializing, and team building activities. But as days went by, her behavior didn't improve. In fact, it only got worse. Carla became increasingly irritable, picking fights with me over trivial matters that wouldn't have bothered her before. We had rarely argued in the past, and our relationship had always been healthy, but now the ease we once shared was replaced by tension. Every day seemed to bring new conflicts, often triggered by the smallest things. A comment that would have made her laugh before now led to either a sigh or, worse, an argument. I couldn't understand where this sudden anger and frustration were coming from. As time passed, it wasn't just the arguments that troubled me. Carla began pulling away from me in other ways. We had a tradition of going on weekly dates, simple outings where we would enjoy a coffee or take a walk in the park, moments to reconnect and unwind. But suddenly, she started canceling these dates for reasons that seemed flimsy. She'd say she was too tired or had too much work to do, even on weekends. As the cancellations piled up, so did my concerns. I missed spending time with her, the laughter we used to share, and the connection we had. Her mood swings became more frequent. One moment, she'd seem fine, and the next, she'd retreat into herself, moody and withdrawn. Naturally, I began to worry. Was she falling out of love with me? Or worse, was she seeing someone else? I hated to even consider that possibility, but her behavior felt so unlike her that I couldn't ignore it. When I confronted her about my fears, Carla insisted there was no one else. She even gaslighted me, claiming I was overthinking things and that she just needed time to figure out some personal issues. She promised there was nothing for me to worry about. Wanting to respect her space, I decided to give her some room to breathe, hoping she would eventually return to herself and that things would go back to normal. However, the more space I gave her, the more distant she became. She started working longer hours, often coming home late, sometimes even after I'd already gone to bed. She used to share little stories about her day, telling me about her coworkers or the latest office drama, but now there was nothing. It was just silence. Whenever I tried to talk to her, she became increasingly evasive, and her actions started to raise suspicions in my mind. With our relationship clearly on shaky ground, I suggested marriage counseling. I thought that with the help of a therapist, we could figure out what was causing the distance between us and work on reconnecting. To my surprise, Carla refused, saying she wanted to see a therapist on her own first and needed to work on herself before we could work on our marriage. Although disappointed, I agreed. I wanted her to get the help she needed, even if it wasn't the solution I had hoped for. Carla quickly found a therapist and started attending 3 sessions a week, each lasting 2 hours. I didn't question her too much about it, trusting that she had found someone capable of helping her. I just hoped she would find the clarity and peace she was looking for, and that we could eventually rebuild our connection. After each session, she seemed lighter, in a better mood, as if a weight had been lifted. I held on to the hope that this might be the turning point for us, but things only continued to get stranger. Carla began spending even more time away from home. What started as occasional evenings out quickly turned into nearly every weekend. She'd leave without much of an explanation, only to return late at night. I never minded her going out with friends. In fact, I encouraged her to have her own life outside of our marriage, but I expected some communication. The constant absences, paired with her failure to inform me of her plans, made me feel like I was being pushed aside in my own marriage. It seemed like Carla didn't care that I missed spending time with her, or how much I longed for the closeness we once shared. The situation only grew more troubling when I accidentally discovered that Carla wasn't just spending time with friends during her outings. She was also meeting strangers at bars, something she had never mentioned to me. This revelation only deepened my confusion and hurt. I had no idea where things were headed, but the distance between us had never felt wider. Several of my friends reached out to me, expressing concern after seeing my wife at various bars. They told me that she was dancing with unfamiliar men, visibly intoxicated, and acting in ways that felt completely out of character for her. They recognized her as my wife, which made it even more humiliating. I was devastated to hear about her behavior secondhand. It was a shock to realize that others had witnessed it, while I had been completely unaware. I felt a sense of confusion and embarrassment as I tried to make sense of it all. Eventually, I gathered the courage to confront her, hoping for an honest conversation. When I brought up my concerns, she dismissed them casually, telling me that she was just having fun. She explained that dancing and talking to strangers didn't mean she was doing anything inappropriate. Her attitude made it seem as though her actions were harmless, and that I shouldn't be upset by this version of her, one I barely recognized. Then she stopped helping with the household chores. We had always divided them equally. I was responsible for cooking and packing our lunches, while Carla took care of the dishes, the laundry, and mowing the lawn. This system had always worked well for us, but suddenly, Carla started complaining about how overwhelmed she was by housework. She argued that none of her friends had to juggle both work and home duties. We'd always had a shared understanding, a give-and-take arrangement that allowed both of us to focus on our careers while maintaining our home. So, her sudden frustration was unexpected. I tried to understand where she was coming from, but I couldn't ignore the reality of the situation. I pointed out that many of her friends were stay-at-home wives, dedicating their entire days to managing their homes. I suggested that if she was feeling overburdened, she could consider quitting her job and taking care of the house full-time. I'd be happy to be the sole breadwinner. However, if she didn't want to leave her job, I emphasized that we both needed to contribute to household responsibilities. I never complained about the work I did, so why was she making an issue of it? Carla continued to insist that she didn't want to do housework anymore. She explained that her job was already demanding and she didn't want to come home and work as well. She told me I needed to step up and take over everything until she felt ready to handle it again. Since then, I've been managing all the household responsibilities on my own: cooking, cleaning, laundry, and everything else. I hoped she would eventually recognize my efforts, but my work has gone unacknowledged. Imagine my surprise when 2 months ago I found out that Carla had been spreading wild claims about me around the neighborhood. I learned this from some of my male friends, whose wives were also friends with Carla. These friends, who had known me for years, seemed concerned about the things she had been saying. Carla had been telling them that I was controlling and toxic, claiming I never let her live peacefully. When some of these wives asked her for details, Carla allegedly told them that she had discovered over time that I was too narrow-minded, and that I restricted her fun. She claimed that as a result she felt unfulfilled in our marriage. To cope with this, she had started talking to other men in an attempt to reconnect with parts of herself she felt had been suppressed after marrying me. She even confessed to fantasizing about exploring her femininity with other men. At first, I didn't believe it. This didn't sound like Carla at all. She had always been private about our relationship and kept personal issues to herself, especially when it came to our friends. I couldn't understand why she would lie about me in this way. For months, I had quietly supported her, and now she was suddenly blaming me for being toxic and stifling her. I decided to confront her directly. I told her what my friends had shared with me, asking if it was true that she had been speaking about me this way. I wanted to hear her side of the story and understand why she felt the need to talk about our issues with others. To my shock, Carla didn't deny it. She calmly admitted to sharing her feelings, explaining that she felt dissatisfied and unsure about our relationship, which led her to talk to others about her frustrations. When I asked her what exactly she meant by this, Carla began to open up about her therapy sessions. She told me that her therapist had helped her realize that what she was missing in her life was excitement. In a tone that seemed unusually detached, she told me she now saw me as boring and predictable. She felt our marriage lacked passion, and those words stung because I had always believed she was happy with the life we had built together. I reminded her of all the times she had expressed contentment and how we had worked together to keep our relationship balanced. But instead of understanding where I was coming from, Carla accused me of suffocating her by holding on to past memories. She argued that while she had grown and adapted over the years, I had remained the same. And that was the root of our disconnect. As she spoke, my mind started to spiral. I asked her directly what she truly desired from our marriage. She hesitated, clearly nervous, before admitting that she and her therapist thought an open marriage could be the key to fixing our issues. I was stunned and told her plainly that I didn't believe in open marriages. Carla, however, argued that even though I didn't believe in it, she did. She insisted that opening up our relationship could reignite the excitement she felt was lacking, allowing her to rediscover herself while remaining married to me. She also said that if I wasn't comfortable with the idea of being with strangers, that was fine, but she wanted the freedom to explore without feeling guilty about it. Her suggestion left me in shock, unable to process what she was saying. I had never imagined that our marriage would come to a point where she would feel the need to seek satisfaction elsewhere. How could meeting new people and still staying married be the solution to our issues? And how could her therapist suggest such an approach? I thought her therapy was meant to help her better herself, not encourage these absurd ideas. I told Carla that if she wanted a divorce, she didn't need to fabricate reasons like excitement or a desire for something new. I suggested that if she was truly unhappy, she should just be honest instead of creating excuses for an open marriage. I firmly told her it would be better for us to part ways than to remain married while engaging with strangers. This wasn't what I envisioned for our relationship, and I couldn't support it. But to my surprise, Carla countered by saying she actually enjoyed being married to me. She explained how much she valued me as a dependable and reliable partner, someone who provided a solid foundation. Yet, in the same breath, she claimed the spark was gone and insisted we could stay together while having fun with other people. She argued that this arrangement could spice things up and benefit our marriage. I told her I needed time to think it over because this was not a decision I could make impulsively. Over the next few days, as I reflected on our relationship, I came to the painful realization that an open marriage was not something I wanted. More importantly, I didn't recognize the person Carla had become. She had changed so much that I barely knew her anymore. Her style had drastically shifted. Her clothing choices were now more revealing and provocative, and she seemed glued to her phone, engaged in constant conversations with others. It felt as if she had embraced an entirely different lifestyle, one that didn't align with the values we once shared. She rarely interacted with me anymore and neglected her role in maintaining our home. It was as though I was nothing more than a roommate to her, not a partner. Slowly, I realized that I didn't want this version of my wife. I didn't want a partner who felt the need to seek fulfillment from others. I had spent months trying to be patient, trying to support her, trying to give her the space she needed. But the Carla I had fallen in love with was no longer there. She had become someone who seemed to view our relationship as a mere convenience, not a commitment, and it hurt. But I understood that maybe it was time to let go. I had done everything I could, but clearly it wasn't enough. After reflecting deeply for 2 weeks, I sat Carla down and told her I wanted a divorce. I explained all my reasons and urged her not to resist my decision. However, Carla quickly became angry. She accused me of being overly sensitive and insisted that asking for a divorce was an extreme reaction. She couldn't understand why I wouldn't just adapt to the new lifestyle she was proposing. I stayed calm, reiterating that this wasn't something I wanted and that she couldn't force me to accept it. Each point I made seemed to make her angrier. She then turned the blame on me, accusing me of not being willing to work on the marriage, claiming I was the real problem. I wasn't surprised. She had always been quick to gaslight me, blaming me for everything without taking any responsibility herself. I tried to reason with her, but she wasn't backing down. Realizing we were getting nowhere, I asked her to leave. Since this was my house, I felt it was justified to ask her to pack her things and move out now that we were done. Carla yelled at me, saying I had no right to ask her to leave. She even threatened to ruin my life if I went through with the divorce. Her hostility only strengthened my resolve, and I stood my ground, calmly warning her not to escalate things any further. In the end, she had no choice but to comply, but not without throwing a tantrum, hurling things around the house, and even scratching my car in a fit of rage as she left. Thankfully, I made sure to document everything, including photographs of the damage and records of her outbursts, knowing I'd likely need it in the future. Honestly, it was a heartbreaking and painful end to what had once been a meaningful relationship. Since moving out, Carla has been sending me insults about my masculinity and spreading rumors around town, telling anyone who will listen that I unfairly kicked her out and calling me a coward for not fighting for our marriage. Update 1. Thank you to everyone for your kind comments. I'm not blind to the reality of the situation now. It's become clear that Carla may have been having an affair or multiple affairs while we were married, and this might be the real reason she suggested an open marriage. She likely just wanted to keep the benefits of being married to someone established like me, without actually investing in our relationship. As for why this happened, I still don't know. Perhaps she never truly loved me. Perhaps over time she gradually fell out of love, but at this stage it no longer matters. Carla keeps leaving me voicemails, blaming me for everything, and honestly, I'm just exhausted by her endless accusations. Update: it's been 2 weeks since my last post. For the past week, Carla has been persistently reaching out to meet, sending numerous texts and making calls. Finally, I agreed to meet her today. A small part of me hoped that maybe she had come to her senses, ready to have an honest conversation and perhaps even take some responsibility for what happened between us. However, as soon as we sat down, Carla launched into a new narrative. She claimed that her therapist believed I was abandoning our marriage simply because things had gotten difficult. According to the therapist, I was failing to live up to my commitment by not agreeing to her demands. Carla then proceeded to tell me that she would be willing to take me back, but only if I agreed to specific conditions. I was caught off guard. What did she mean by taking me back, especially when I was the one who had asked for a divorce? I sarcastically asked what her conditions were. Carla insisted that I agree to an open marriage and allow her to quit her job so she could live a stress-free life without ever worrying about work. I couldn't help but laugh at that. Initially, I thought she was joking. How could she possibly be doubling down on such absurd demands after everything that had happened? Did she really think I would be open to any of it after how she had treated me? Her total lack of self-awareness was astounding. I told her I would never accept such unreasonable terms because I was completely done with our marriage. I revealed to her that I had already spoken to a lawyer and was in the process of filing for divorce. At that moment, her face drained of color and her tone shifted from anger to desperation. She asked me if I was truly leaving her. I nodded. There was nothing left for me in this marriage, and I was done trying to make things work with someone so out of touch with reality and unwilling to compromise. Then, unexpectedly, Carla broke down into tears. Seeing her cry caught me off guard. It was the last thing I had anticipated. I gently asked her to calm down and inquired why she was reacting this way. Was she really that heartbroken over my decision when she should have seen it coming from a mile away? Watching her sob, I began to wonder if something deeper was going on. I asked her to be honest with me and explain if there was something else behind her odd behavior over the past few months. That's when Carla finally opened up and shared the truth. She admitted that about a year ago, she had reconnected with an old friend from high school named Elle. At their high school reunion, Elle had become somewhat of a self-proclaimed relationship expert on social media. Carla confessed that she and Elle started spending more and more time together, rekindling their friendship with long conversations and regular meetups. Over time, Elle became a significant influence in Carla's life. Carla revealed that Elle was the one who first pointed out how unhappy she seemed in our marriage, and Elle began questioning her about me and our relationship. As Carla shared more about me and our life together, Elle frequently criticized our marriage, calling it stifling and restrictive. Elle kept reminding Carla of how fun and adventurous she used to be in high school with multiple boyfriends, and expected her to live that way now. According to Elle, Carla had become boring, which led Carla to resent me. She essentially blamed me for her shift in behavior, feeling as though she had lost herself in the marriage. Instead of accepting responsibility for her choices, she projected her frustration onto me. As time went on, this resentment built up, and she emotionally distanced herself, convinced that I was the reason she wasn't living the life she had imagined for herself. Elle continued to influence her, convincing her that in order to return to her true self, she needed to let go of her inhibitions, be more free around strangers, and just have fun. When Carla's work trip came up 7 months ago, Elle encouraged her to use the opportunity to let loose and flirt with her male coworkers since she would be far away from me and home. Carla then confessed that she had kissed someone during that work trip, but refused to reveal his name. She admitted that upon returning, she felt guilty, but was scared to tell me the truth. However, Elle was thrilled for her and pushed her to explore more of the freedom she felt she deserved. Carla admitted that when she started going out to clubs and getting attention from men, she felt validated and seen. It excited her, and she began chasing that feeling, despite knowing it was wrong. She couldn't stop herself. When I finally suggested counseling, she was afraid of telling me the truth, fearing I would leave her. Instead, she chose to pursue therapy as a cover-up. But in reality, those therapy sessions were just her meeting up with Elle to gossip and vent. Carla admitted that she trusted Elle deeply, believing that Elle knew her better than anyone else. Over time, Elle's influence grew stronger, and Carla started internalizing everything Elle told her, that she deserved excitement and freedom, no matter the consequences. Whenever I reached out expressing my concerns, Elle would convince Carla that I was being controlling or toxic, and that I was holding her back from being her authentic self. In fact, it was because of Elle that Carla even suggested an open marriage, thinking it might be a solution. I had refused to give in to her demands, and much to her surprise, I stood firm, even going so far as to kick her out. Carla later explained that she had planned to tell me the truth right after that incident, but Elle had convinced her that she needed to maintain control over the situation. Instead of coming clean, Elle had suggested she should keep me on edge, making me chase after her. For this very lunch, Elle had strongly advised Carla not to apologize, but instead to demand what she wanted from me. However, Elle's advice had once again backfired, making me more determined than ever to seek a divorce, which finally led Carla to admit the truth. Carla pleaded with me to stay, admitting she had temporarily lost her mind. She confessed that Elle's influence had clouded her judgment, explaining that since her friend was seen as a relationship expert, she had trusted her advice. However, it was now clear that this advice had only caused harm. With the truth out in the open, Carla said she was ready to seek legitimate therapy, and even suggested we attend marriage counseling together if I was open to it. I could see Carla's desperation for one last chance to rebuild our relationship, and she promised to do whatever it took to make things right. Despite her plea, I knew deep down I couldn't stay. It was obvious that Elle had somehow swayed my wife's thoughts, but she wasn't the sole issue here. Carla had willingly gone along with everything, making her own choices for months. She could have started repairing our marriage by having an honest conversation about her feelings, but instead, she chose to bottle everything up, letting Elle's toxic advice guide her actions. She had gaslighted me, manipulated me, and disregarded my feelings, all while pretending that everything was fine. On top of that, she had cheated on me. It wasn't until she was desperate that she came clean. I told her, firmly, that no matter her confession, I couldn't stay. While I felt some sympathy for her, I couldn't ignore the disgust I felt towards who she had become. The betrayal, the lies, the hurt. It couldn't be erased. She needed professional help to navigate through everything in her life. I offered to help her find a therapist to address her issues, but that was the extent of the help I was willing to offer. Later, when I left after our meeting, she looked genuinely remorseful, almost apologetic. But by that point, I simply didn't care anymore. Update 3. I couldn't sleep at all after my conversation with Carla. I felt the need to look into Elle's social media to see who this woman really was. My wife had kept her friendship with Elle hidden from me for months, and now I wanted to know more about her. I admit, I went a little overboard with my research, but what I found was shocking. It turned out that Elle and I shared a mutual friend, a guy I knew who had gone to the same college as her. I reached out to him to learn more, and his response was eye-opening. According to him, Elle had a long history of affairs, all with married men. Elle had always dreamed of marrying a wealthy man to avoid working, and after college she found an older, rich man and married him quickly. However, she continued to have secret affairs, and when her husband found out, he left her. Elle wasn't bothered by it. Her only concern was securing alimony during their divorce. After that, she started a social media page calling herself a relationship guru. Hearing this, it was clear that Elle was a bad influence, and I wasn't surprised at all that she had given Carla the wrong advice, ultimately destroying our marriage. Update 4. It's been a month since my last update. For those asking, I did have a more in-depth conversation with Carla about Elle's past. It turns out Carla had no idea about Elle's history of affairs. She was shocked to learn that her so-called friend had kept all of this from her. At this point, I blamed Carla even more than I blamed Elle. Carla had needed an excuse to behave badly in our marriage, and perhaps Elle had just shown her the way. Carla admitted to feeling humiliated when she realized how much she had been lied to and manipulated by her friend. I told her it didn't matter anymore, but advised her to be more cautious about taking advice from others in the future. She had come clean to me, and now all I wanted was a divorce so I could move on. In the end, Carla agreed to the divorce. According to our lawyers, the process should be straightforward, since we don't share any joint assets or children.